You ever get that feeling like you're working your tail off, but just not seeing the results you want?
Happens to all of us.
Yeah.
Happens to the best of us.
Well, what if I told you there's a way to kind of hack the system?
Hmm.
A way to get more done with less effort?
Sounds like a dream.
It might sound too good to be true, but it's actually based on a simple principle called the Pareto Principle, or what's commonly known as the 80-20 rule.
The 80-20
Yeah.
rule, basically it's this idea that 80% of your results come from just 20% of your efforts.
Wow.
And this principle can be applied to pretty much every area of life.
I'm intrigued, I have to admit. It's like a productivity life hack. And that's what we're diving deep into today, the Pareto Principle. We'll be exploring its origins, real-world examples, and how you can actually start using it to boost your productivity, simplify your life, and even make smarter business decisions.
We'll also be looking at some of the potential pitfalls of the Pareto principle and how to avoid them.
We'll be drawing insights from a variety of sources, including books, articles, and real-world case studies.
So if you're ready to unlock the power of the 80-20 rule, buckle up. It's going to be an insightful ride.
Let's kick things off by going back in time to the early 1900s.
Okay.
The setting is not a boardroom or a laboratory, but a garden.
A garden.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm listening.
Enter Vilfredo Pareto, an Italian economist, and a bunch of pea pods.
Pea pods. This is where it all began.
This is where it all began.
Okay.
Pareto was tending to his garden when he made a curious observation.
What was that?
He noticed that 20% of his pea pods were producing 80% of the peas.
Interesting.
Now, Pareto, being the brilliant economist that he was, didn't just dismiss this as a gardening quirk.
Right.
He started to see if this pattern held true in other areas.
Makes sense.
So he shifted his focus to wealth distribution in Italy, and what he discovered was pretty mind-blowing.
What did he find?
He found that 80% of the land and wealth was owned by just 20% of the population.
Hmm.
This uneven distribution sparked his curiosity and led him to formulate what we now know as the Pareto Principle.
So from peas to economics, Pareto stumbled upon this principle of uneven distribution, where 80% of the effects come from just 20% of the causes.
Exactly. And what's even more fascinating is that this 80-20 split wasn't just limited to peas or Italian economics.
Right.
Pareto continued his research and found that this pattern kept popping up in other countries and across different economic systems.
Like a universal law.
It's like a universal law, almost like the universe is playing a little game with us, hiding this 80-20 pattern everywhere.
Yeah, it's almost like a code embedded in the fabric of reality.
And the really cool part is that this principle isn't just confined to economics either.
Oh, I bet it shows up in all sorts of places.
Oh, you have no idea.
Give me some examples, I gotta know.
Okay, so get ready for this. In most languages, 20% of the words account for 80% of everyday speech.
Interesting.
In software development, a small number of bugs often cause the vast majority of system crashes.
Yeah, I can see that.
And get this, studies have shown that 80% of the wear and tear on a carpet happens on just 20% of its surface.
Okay, that one's a little surprising.
It's everywhere. And
Yeah.
that's what makes this principle so powerful and so potentially life-changing.
It's almost like a secret cheat code for life.
It is. It's about understanding where to focus your energy and effort for maximum impact.
But hold on. How do we actually find that crucial 20% in our own lives?
Yeah.
Like, how do we pinpoint what really matters?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's what we'll be tackling in part 2 of this deep dive. So stay tuned. We'll be back after a short break.
Can't wait.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
We've got a lot more to uncover.
Awesome.
All right, we'll see you in a bit. All right, we're back and ready to dig even deeper into this 80-20 rule.
Let's do it.
You know, I have to admit, after that last segment, I'm already starting to see the Pareto Principle everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Where do you see it?
Well, like, even just looking at my desk right now.
Uh-huh.
You know, I've got this stack of papers that I've been meaning to sort through for ages.
Right.
But I bet if I actually took the time to organize them, I'd find that only like 20% of those papers are actually important.
Probably true for a lot of us.
It's like my brain is already starting to rewire itself.
Well, that's great to hear.
So how do we actually apply this to our lives? Like, how do we find that magical 20%?
Well, the first step is to really take a good look at where you're spending your time and energy.
So, like, track my every move for a week.
Well, you don't have to go that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be helpful to keep a general log of your activities for a few days.
Okay.
Just to get a sense of where your time is actually going.
So, like a time diary of sorts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you have a better understanding of how you're spending your time, you can start to identify those activities that are truly driving the majority of your results.
I see. So it's not about just working more hours. It's about figuring out which tasks are actually making a difference.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that not all tasks are created equal. Some tasks are high-impact tasks that contribute significantly to your goals, while others are low-impact tasks that don't really move the needle.
Okay, so let's say I've done my time tracking
Yeah.
and I've identified some of those low impact tasks. What do I do next?
Well, the next step is to figure out how you can either eliminate, delegate, or automate those low-impact tasks.
Eliminate. That sounds a little scary.
Well, it doesn't have to be about completely getting rid of things. Sometimes it's just about reducing the amount of time you spend on them.
Okay, so like if I'm spending hours every week responding to emails, maybe I can set aside specific times for email and stick to a schedule.
Exactly. Or maybe you can use email filters to prioritize important messages.
Clever.
And then for tasks that can't be eliminated, think about whether you can delegate them to someone else.
Like if I have a virtual assistant, they can handle some of those administrative tasks that are bogging me down.
Exactly. And finally, look for opportunities to automate tasks wherever possible.
Automation. I like the sound of that.
There's so many tools and technologies available these days that can help you automate repetitive tasks.
That's true. I mean, think about all the things we can do now with just a few clicks on our phones.
Exactly. The key is to free up your time and mental energy so that you can focus on those high-impact activities that are truly driving your success.
This is making so much sense. And it's not just about productivity, right? I mean, we talked about how the Pareto Principle can be applied to decluttering our homes and simplifying our lives.
Absolutely. Richard Koch, in his book, The 80-20 Principle, suggests that we only keep items that spark joy.
Oh, yeah, the KonMari method.
Exactly. It's about identifying the 20% of your possessions that bring you the most value and happiness and letting go of the rest.
I'm starting to see how this can be applied to so many different areas of life.
It can. And one area where I think it's particularly powerful is in our relationships.
Relationships. Tell me more.
Well, think about it. We all have those relationships that drain our energy or leave us feeling unfulfilled.
Oh, yeah, we've all got those.
And then we have those relationships that energize us and make us feel supported.
Right.
The Pareto Principle encourages us to be mindful of where we're investing our time and energy in our relationships.
So it's not about cutting people out of our lives.
Not necessarily. It's about recognizing that the 20% of relationships that bring us the most joy deserve our primary focus.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, we only have so much time and energy to give.
Exactly. So why not invest it in the relationships that truly matter?
It's like a quality over quantity approach to relationships.
I like that. Now, before we get too carried away with applying the Pareto Principle to everything, I do want to mention that it's important to use this principle as a guideline, not a rigid rule.
Right. So there are some potential pitfalls to watch out for.
Absolutely. For example, in business, while it's helpful to identify your top-performing customers, it doesn't mean you should neglect the other 80% of your client base.
You still need to provide excellent service to all your customers.
Exactly. And in our personal lives, while it's important to prioritize our most valuable relationships, it does mean we should abandon our other relationships altogether.
Balance is key.
Balance is key. And it's also important to remember that the Pareto Principle is not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process of evaluation and refinement.
So it's not just about finding that magical 20% once and then you're done.
Nope. It's about continually reassessing your priorities and making adjustments as needed.
Makes sense. So we've talked about identifying that high impact 20%, but can we actually take this principle a step further?
Absolutely. In fact, one of those fascinating aspects of the Pareto Principle is its fractal nature.
Fractal nature, what do you mean by that?
Well, it means that you can actually apply the Pareto Principle to the 20% itself.
Wait, so you're saying we can find the 20% within the 20%?
Exactly. It's like zooming in on a fractal and seeing the same pattern repeated at a smaller scale.
Okay. My mind is officially blown.
This leads to a concept called Pareto efficiency, which is the idea that resources are optimally allocated when you can't make anyone better off without making someone else worse off.
Okay, that sounds a little complicated. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you're filling a jar. You want to get the most in right. So you start with the big rocks, then the pebbles, then the sand.
I'm following.
If you try to do it the other way around, you won't be able to fit everything in.
Oh, I see. It's like prioritizing the most important things first.
Exactly. And that's what Pareto efficiency is all about. It's about maximizing benefit with minimal waste.
I love that analogy. It makes this whole concept so much clearer.
It's a great way to visualize how the Pareto Principle can be applied in a practical way.
And you're saying that we can keep applying this principle over and over again to achieve even greater levels of efficiency.
Exactly. And this leads to incredible leverage, where a tiny fraction of your effort yields a huge portion of your desired outcome.
Okay, I need to see this in action. Give me an example.
Well, think about sports teams. Research suggests that some teams earn 50% of their revenue from just 1% of their most dedicated fans.
Wow, that's incredible.
These are the super fans who buy season tickets merchandise and attend every game. By applying the Pareto Principle twice,
Yeah.
they've identified a tiny, incredibly valuable segment of their audience.
So it's about finding those core customers or those core activities that are really moving the needle.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic happens.
This is so fascinating. But before we get too lost in the fractal world of the Pareto Principle,
Yeah.
we still have one more area to explore,
Which is,
world of business.
let's do it.
I'm really curious to see how this 80-20 rule can be applied to help businesses thrive.
Well, get ready, because we're about to unlock some serious business insights.
All right, let's dive in. We're back and ready to tackle the business world, armed with our newfound knowledge of the Pareto Principle.
It's time to see how this 80-20 rule can transform the way businesses operate, from boosting sales to streamlining operations and even managing risk.
Okay, so let's talk strategy. How can businesses actually leverage the Pareto Principle to gain a competitive edge?
One of the most powerful applications is in customer relationship management.
Customer relationships. Yeah, that's crucial for any business.
Absolutely. So imagine this. You analyze your sales data, and you realize that 80% of your revenue comes from just 20% of your customers.
Okay, so those are my VIP clients,
Yeah.
the ones I really need to keep happy.
Exactly. And that's where the Pareto Principle comes in. It's about recognizing that not all customers are created equal, and that by focusing on those high-value clients, you can maximize your return on investment.
Makes sense. So what kind of strategies can businesses use to cater to those top-tier customers?
Well, think loyalty programs, personalized, offers exclusive access to events, or even just a simple handwritten thank you note.
Little things can go a long way.
They really can. It's
Yeah.
about making those customers feel valued and appreciated.
And I bet that translates into increased customer loyalty and repeat business.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation.
So we've talked about focusing on the 20% of customers who are driving the majority of revenue, but what about the other side of the coin?
What do you mean?
Well, what about identifying the areas of the business that are maybe draining resources without generating much return?
Yes. That's another key application of the Pareto Principle. It's about spotting those inefficiencies and streamlining your operations.
So give me an example.
Well, let's say you're running an e-commerce business, and you realize that 80% of customer complaints are tied to just 20% of your products.
Okay, so that's a red flag right there.
It definitely is. It's telling you that you need to take a closer look at those problematic products and figure out what's going on.
Maybe there's a quality control issue, or maybe the product description isn't clear enough.
Exactly. And once you've identified the root cause, you can then take steps to address it.
Either by improving the product, fixing the description, or maybe even discontinuing it altogether.
Exactly. It's about cutting your losses and focusing on the products that are actually performing well.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's not just about products, right? I mean, businesses can apply the same principle to other areas of their operations.
Absolutely. Think marketing campaigns, for
So,
example.
yeah, you could be spending a fortune on ads that aren't generating any leads.
That's where the Pareto Principle can help you identify the 20% of marketing channels or strategies that are driving the majority of your results.
So if social media ads aren't working, maybe it's time to shift your focus to email marketing or content creation.
Exactly. It's about optimizing your marketing spend and ensuring that every dollar you invest is working as hard as possible.
This all sounds great for established businesses. But what about startups or entrepreneurs who are just starting out?
Well, I think the Pareto Principle is even more crucial in the early stages of a business.
Why is that?
Well, when you're first starting out, resources are limited and every decision counts.
You're wearing multiple hats and trying to do everything at once.
Exactly. And that's where the Pareto Principle can help you prioritize those critical tasks that will have the greatest impact on your success.
So instead of trying to be all things to all people, it's about focusing on your core offering and your target market.
Precisely. It's about doing less, but doing it better.
I love that. It's about working smarter, not harder.
And as your business grows, you can continue to apply the Pareto Principle to guide your decision-making. Identify new opportunities and ensure you're always focusing on the 20% that truly moves the needle.
It's like a secret weapon for business success.
It really is.
Mm.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into the Pareto Principle,
Yeah.
I do want to touch on one more area that's particularly relevant in today's business environment:
And that is
risk management.
risk management. That's a big one.
It is, and it's something that every business needs to take seriously.
So how does the Pareto Principle apply to risk management?
Well, the idea is that in most organizations, 80% of the potential risks come from just 20% of the possible causes.
Okay, so it's about identifying those high impact risks and focusing your mitigation efforts on those areas.
Exactly. By understanding where the biggest vulnerabilities lie, businesses can prioritize their resources and develop targeted strategies to minimize those risks.
That makes a lot of sense. So the Pareto Principle isn't just a productivity hack, it's a comprehensive framework for optimizing every aspect of your business.
It really is. From customer relationships to product development to marketing and even risk management, the 80/20 rule can be applied to virtually every area of your operations.
This has been an incredible journey exploring the ins and outs of this fascinating principle.
It has. And I hope our listeners have gained some valuable insights that they can apply to their own lives and businesses.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from pea pods to productivity hacks to the power of focus and prioritization,
And ultimately, it all comes down to one key takeaway.
which is
The Pareto Principle is about understanding that not all efforts are created equal, and that by focusing on the vital few actions, tasks, or areas of focus, you can achieve extraordinary results.
it's a reminder that we don't have to do everything, we just have to do the right things.
Exactly. So to our listeners, we challenge you to take what you've learned today and start applying it to your own lives and businesses.
Identify your high impact 20%, eliminate or delegate those low value tasks, and watch as your productivity skyrockets and your goals become more attainable than ever before. Happy. And until next time, keep on learning.